I mean, one of the biggest things that we just see out in our quotes and just doing the jobs and everything is, I mean, people just automatically go to sod or grass at first just because they think, oh, it's way cheaper. And when I look at turf, all I think of is football field turf, and it just doesn't look good. So obviously turf's advanced a ton over the years. So kind of talk about, you guys not manufacture it yourself, but do you?
So we do actually.
Okay.
So we call it contract manufacturing. We have a manufacturer that does the backing and then the yarn, and so we pick and design our own yarn, and then have it made for us. And it's made. Most of our turf is made here in the United States, in Georgia, and brought out and trucked out here to Southern California. We do import some from China as well, and that's more normally the imported products are a little bit more competitive in pricing. But since the tariffs hit recently, about a year ago, the price of your imported Chinese type turfs have went up significantly, some up 30+%, which has made the U.S. turf a lot more price competitive.
Well, which do you say is better? Can you tell a big difference in the quality between those two turfs?
We've found that we have less claims on the U.S. made products. I think quality control is a little bit better here in the States than on the imported products. Yeah. So we found that we probably have a lot less claims on, warranty type claims on the U.S. made compared to the Chinese products. Granted, there are some really great looking Chinese imported products, but we're proud to kind of offer a much more extensive line of U.S. made products compared to a lot of our competitors in this industry.
No, and I think the first turf product we ever did was a Chinese product, and I think, I mean, I don't know if you or we've had the conversation, but I think that you can really tell the difference. Not that there's not good Chinese products, but
no, there's not that many great Chinese products. I mean, there's a couple, like you said, there's some that look good, but one of the problems we had right away, which also we probably should have done a little better, and I think it happens to any turf, but there was a big a glare off the window. And it just melted the turf. That
is, so south and southeast facing windows, you have to take that in consideration whenever you're installing turf. If you see windows that face those directions, you should go out there around anywhere from 10 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, even at maybe 3 p.m., and see if you're getting reflection off those and if it's going to hit the turf area. And if that's the case, we can make recommendations on companies that install screens that limit the amount of reflection that come off those windows.
That's interesting, yeah.
So that it eliminates the melting of the turf. But a lot of these dual pane windows, the sunlight goes in, is magnified once, bounces off the inside, the second pane, and bounces backward and magnifies again, and will melt turf. Yeah. Now there is a nylon product that we offer. Price point, it's much more expensive, but it's no melt, guaranteed no melt.
What is that called?
It's a nylon product, and I'll get you the name of it. It's it's used only in situations where the homeowner doesn't want to screen their windows or put a tint on them.
It's possible to get the glare out.
Exactly. So, but it's definitely available.
Okay. And I guess taking a step back, when you're talking, because I'm sure you get asked a lot, what is just your opinion on turf versus sod? Like if you're just asked that question, or just your personal opinion on the difference.
Yeah, natural grass is great. It looks good, it feels good. A lot of people grew up on it, but synthetic turf, it's becoming a lifestyle choice. It's not just a drought alternative anymore. You never know when California is going to tell you that you can't water your lawn anymore. Yeah. And we live in a desert, and a lot of the turfs that are, the natural grasses that are installed, they need, 30+ inches of precipitation to survive. Our desert conditions out here, we're lucky to get 10 inches of rain for a whole year. So, synthetic turf, it's more of a lifestyle choice now, and it looks very clean. It's very green. Pristine. And even going back to natural grass, to keep it green, you have to put synthetic fertilizers down. And those fertilizers, a lot of those come from byproducts of oil, gasoline. So You're putting salts and, phosphorus and, synthetic nitrogen and things like that into the soil. And that sometimes can get into the, into the streams and things like that and kind of mess up the ecology. So, synthetic turf, you don't have to water it. You don't have to fertilize it. If you have pests, you don't have to use any sort of chemicals to treat, grubs or anything like that. And it's not going to die. Yeah.
You do have to put anything down.
Also, the technology's evolved so much. The first synthetic turfs on the market, they were flat blade technology, which gave a lot of reflection. It just didn't look real. Yeah. Now you're seeing, diamond blades, W blades, S blades, double C blades, and those help the turf stand up, reduces the amount of reflection and sheen on the turf, and makes it look, it lasts a lot longer and just looks a lot more real.
Because each individual blade is, like you just mentioned, the W, the C.
It's an engineered blade, exactly. Yeah. And so they've come out with turfs, and we sell turf, synthetic turf that has multiple colors. We actually have one of the first 5 color turfs on the market, where there's 5 different colors of blades in the turf, and it looks a lot more natural.
It has like some off green, some yellows in there and stuff like that. Like it looks like the thatch.
Yeah, even a little bit of brown, because even natural grass isn't all perfectly green.
Yeah. No, and if you look at the blades of there's no such thing as a blade of grass that doesn't have some type of curvature to it, or something that has, an S shape, a U shape, I don't even know. But there's certain times where we walk out onto either jobs that we've done or just into the showroom with Imperial Sprinkler, you can't even tell the difference anymore between grass and turf if you're looking at it from, even 10 feet away in some cases. It just looks, It looks perfect.
And the backing, so we offer an antimicrobial backing. And I believe we're one of the first manufacturers in the market to do so, where there's an antimicrobial agent in the backing that doesn't allow, any sort of microbes to grow, which is great. So if you have pets, and they're relieving themselves on your turf, it helps prevent, smell and things like that. And from a sanitation standpoint, it's really a revolutionary type of backing.
That was a great way to put it, relieving. I have such a hard time in every quote, and I'm like, yeah, if your dog takes a dump on your turf, it's going to be hard to know. Relieving yourself, I'll use that from now on.
Yeah.
So let's talk face weight for a second, because that's something, if you're shopping turf, no doubt you're going to see some number by the turf that you're going to be buying. Can you explain what face weight is and why it's important, and kind of some of the ways that some manufacturers are cheating face weight and some of that stuff?
So it's ounces per square yard of the yarn, not the backing. Now, some of the manufacturers, including the backing with the yarn as the weight of the turf, but traditional way to do it, it's not misleading, is a square yard and how many ounces the actual yarn weighs. Now, real quick, go back to...
No, my understanding is just kind of, the higher, because there's no such thing as no maintenance. Some people think of turf and they think no maintenance. Uh-huh. My understanding is kind of the higher the face weight, the more ounces per square yard, the easier it stands up, or the longer it stands up.
So there's different applications, You always want to take into consideration safety first if you have children. Mm-hmm. A lot of people think pet turf if they have pets. But if you have a 2-year-old or 4-year-old or 5-year-old, first thing you want to do is look at safety for them. A lot of the pet turfs have like a 1-inch pile height, and they're really good for pets because when they, go number 2 on the turf, it can't get down into the turf as much. So it's easy to scoop and clean from a surface standpoint. Yeah. But they're also designed, the blades are designed they're a lot more strong, a little bit more rigid. And since you have a 1-inch pile height and a more rigid blade to handle the dogs, running on it, pivoting, things like that, it's a little bit of a harder surface, so less fall protection. And that's why if you have children, and pets, always install something for safety.
What kind of is that limit right there that you want to be at if you are looking for safety, something comfortable, right? Because a lot of the turfs that you see coming anywhere from 40 ounce to 120 ounce, right? Isn't that kind of the range?
Yeah. You'll see
a
turf.
nice comfortable turf is like 80
so
ounce.
I would say any like 70, 65 ounce up to 100.
And that gives it that cushion. And
it does. And so a lot of your turfs that aren't pet are 1.5 to 2-inch pile heights compared to the 1 inch for pets. And if you do the proper amount of infill, 1.5 to 2 pounds per square foot, that actually helps as well. You'll see some contractors, they skimp on the amount of infill they're installing. Infill's there to keep the blades up as well as add some sort of a little bit added cushion to the turf.
Yeah, let's go into infill.
We're talking about safety for children, but a lot of people think that a higher ounce product is always the best. If you're looking for aesthetics in a certain area and it's going to be really low traffic, a lot of manufacturers will offer 3 different weights for the same type of product, and you can go with those lower weight products for just an aesthetic, zero traffic area or low traffic area, and save some money on the turf itself. The higher ounce products you like to utilize in areas that have high traffic because they'll stand up to that high traffic a lot better than the lower ounce products. So don't think because it's a higher ounce product, it's a better product. It's a better for an application,
Yeah.
Well, sometimes I've heard that the higher face weight is a little bit more difficult in terms of the application process for some contractors. Have you heard that? Or
I haven't.
Just because it's kind of tough to deal with, it's
harder to install weight. Yeah, and that's a consideration too.
Yeah.
The weight of the turf being delivered. So some of our higher weight face weight products, they'll come in a 75-foot roll compared to a 100-foot roll because of the weight consideration. A 60 ounce compared to an 80 ounce, you're looking at a third more weight than the 60. So it's some contractors like to install lighter weights because they're easier to move around on the job site.
And then one of the next things we hear a lot is just about, turf versus sod especially is, if I install turf, it's going to be way too hot to play, to be on in the summer when it's super hot outside. Talk about some of the different products and infills and stuff that make it so that's really a thing of the past, and it can be just as cool as a grass.
Honestly, if you apply water to the turf, it's going to bring the temperature down immediately. So just hosing it off, spraying it with water. We actually sell a product that's called Hydro Chill. It's a polymer coated sand that actually absorbs water and then slowly releases it. So when you install Hydro Chill as your infill, if it's 80, 90, 100 degrees outside, you activate it with water. So you hose it down, saturate it with water, and it will actually reduce the temperature, 20% of the, 20 to 30% from what the turf is, in full sun in the heat. So Hydro Chill, it's really a great new technology for turf because it, helps answer that, issue with heat.
Being too hot.
But how many parents should let their kids outside when it's 100 degrees playing? So you have to take that in consideration too. Yeah, it can be
better
a little.
To be on the turf than the street, though. That's for sure.
Yeah.
No, and it's never. I don't think that anyone that I know of is just installing, like you see on a football field, the little black tire pellets within the little half-inch. That's just not. So when you're walking on a football field and it's 115 degrees when you're practicing or doing something like that, that's never really the case with the products that you're installing residentially if you have the right recommendations from your supplier or the right recommendations from your contractor. So it is, in our opinion, a much better application. And then from just pricing standpoint, a lot of people just assume, sod's going to be way cheaper than turf in the long run. And it might be a little bit less expensive from just like the product itself, like turf versus material. But when you take into account, when you're putting in new irrigation to make it so that the grass is in the best possible, habitat to live and gets all the water it needs, the excavation, getting the soil content right. I mean, and then installing the grass on top.
And the maintenance after.
And then, yeah.
Having to replace sod if needed, the fertilization, everything that goes into just maintaining the sod. There's a lot of cost in that. So, turf that's so low maintenance that it's a little more expensive up front, but there's really not too many expenses later down the road,
Yeah, there's ROI studies on the internet that, homeowners, if they're educating themselves, can go find. And, they'd be really surprised. The upfront costs might be double, triple installation from regular grass to synthetic turf, but your ROI, you're going to make that back up pretty quickly.
What's like the most expensive per square foot turf that you guys kind of offer?
So probably the low $3 range.
Sod's 60 cents, 59 cents sometimes per square foot.
To a contractor, yes. To a homeowner buying it, it could be even more than that.
Sometimes they have those Home Depot deals, but you never know. Especially if
you pay for what you get. Exactly, honestly, yeah. There's really high end sod farms, and there's not so high end sod farms. So do your due diligence, definitely on your sod selection, but also your synthetic turf selection, where it comes from, how it's manufactured, things like that.
So the only time there are those future expenses with the turf is when it's not, installed correctly. Is there a certain process that you guys like to follow, or that your contractors like to follow in terms of installing?
Standard installation it would be probably a 4-inch compacted class 2 base.
Class 2 base.
Then you're going to use weed fabric on top of that. It's not always necessary, but it's a really good preventative, and it's not that expensive to install as well. So, your compacted class 2 base at 4 inches, a weed fabric. Now, if you live in an area where you have gophers, we sell Gopher Wire that you can install to prevent the gophers from coming up and causing damage to, synthetic turf that's installed. So
that you just kind of staple right into the road base, right?
Yep.
Because the road base gets like 95% compaction.
That's correct, yeah.
So it's like walking on a patio.
Mm-hmm.
It's all graded and tamped down, and then you just kind of roll and nail the turf right in, right?
Yeah, so you'd want to do your compacted base, weed fabric. If you do need Gopher Wire, install that. And then, actually, I'm sorry, the Gopher Wire goes under your compacted base. Then you do your base, weed fabric, and then turf on top of that. And then, we sell a 5-inch galvanized nail that's used for installation. A lot of contractors, sometimes they don't let the turf heat up in the sun before they install it. So they'll take it when it's rolled up, and turf expands in heat. So you want to install it when it's expanded the most, if possible. So you'll see some turf installations where there's waves in it, and that's because it wasn't installed when it was fully, expanded. So you want to take the section that you're going to be installing, cut it, open it up, and let it sit out and heat up in the sun, and then install it.
You don't have stretching when it's already the nails are in place,
Yeah.
Because these are good things to know for the homeowner, because when they're choosing a contractor to do their work, they want to make sure that they know the correct process. For installing it, because otherwise you are going to have future problems that you're not supposed to have with the product like turf.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the biggest callbacks is not installing it cold. And then, you finally get a hot summer day and it heats up and it develops waves in it. And the contractors come back, pull nails on one side and pull it out and re-nail it. That's just a basic installation, kind of basics. There's definitely more techniques on seaming and things like that.
Well, and you can already kind of tell just based on even just your basic overview of the installation process, how many corners that you can cut to make it a cheaper price. I mean, whether it just be no Gopher Wire, no weed fabric, doing 2 inches of DG and then not laying it out, that could be half the price of a good reputable contractor. But I mean, Imperial Sprinkler and good suppliers set you up for success with providing the right projects or the right products, the right installation methods, the warranties on it to cover it if anything does happen. But then once you buy it, I mean, it comes into the contractor's hand to follow all those manufacturer recommended installation methods. and not cutting those corners that you won't see. I mean, we've talked about it a lot, how, I mean, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you could pretty much get the same looking finished product at the last day of the project by doing it on 2 inches of DG compact. I mean, cutting all those corners. The turf could look more or less the same that first day you step off the job and you're starting to enjoy your backyard. It's going to take a couple weeks or a couple months or even a year or so for some of these things to pop up. But then you're going to start having those callbacks where the contractor's not going to call you back. You're going to put someone like Colin in a tough spot where he's going to come out and say, hey, this wasn't installed correctly, so we can't necessarily, offer this warranty that we provide to it. And then it just makes everyone's life harder. You're mad at Colin, you're mad at yourself, you're mad at everyone, as opposed to kind of just asking those basic questions up front of, you have this resource now where you kind of know the basic installation, asking those questions, making sure it's in the proposal, asking someone like Colin at Imperial Sprinkler, wherever you're buying your product from, to make sure that it's all done correctly. If it costs an extra 10, 15, 20%, kind of the same thing as sod versus turf, does that make more sense value-wise later on?
You pay for what you get, and with anything. And so, installation is key. You can have the same turf and 2 different installs, and they'll look completely different. And it's incredible. So, yeah, the key is to make sure that your contractor installs turf, has done it, a bunch. Check their work, photos. A lot of them will offer up addresses on installations that they've done, and you can go drive by somebody's front yard that they've done recently, or a year ago, or 5 years ago, and see it.
Ask the basic questions. Learn from your suppliers. I mean, you got Can You Dig It, which is great to help out with the knowledge and the basics, but just make sure you're asking the right questions when it comes to installing any product in your yard.
Well, Colin, thank you very much for coming on today. I think we all learned a lot. So thank you. I think next week.